The substance was almost perfect. It was almost everything that I wanted from a film. I watched a lot of popular movies last year, but there were a couple of popular releases that I missed. And one of those was The Substance. I was ready to watch it ever since I first saw the trailer pop up on my screen. But as time went on, I had never gotten around to it. I saw so many thumbnails of video essays about The Substance and aging, and I desperately needed to listen to these. I ended up watching the movie in the beginning of January to start off the new year. And wow, what a film. I was expecting to absolutely love this movie from the hype that I saw online and the drama, the absolute trauma that I got from the first half of the movie. But when I finally finished watching it, I was kind of just disappointed. I mean, the movie was good in a lot of parts, but something was off. I didn't know how to put my feelings towards it into words because I love so many parts of the film from a technical level. The sound design was beautiful, the acting couldn't have been performed any better, and the soundtrack. Well, the soundtrack was perfect. It took me until now to recognize everything that didn't really resonate for me in this movie. Mostly, it was a sci-fi element. I love when people have critiques about societal norms and their pressures and put them into their art. But the ending of this movie was flawed to me. Not only do movies exist where we see the protagonists have a problem with themselves due to societal norms, where they eventually come to terms with their internal value at the end of the story, but in the best of these stories, we also see a lasting change on society and systems as a whole. To me, having a really cool sci-fi element in the story and seeing how it plays out in interesting ways, just to have the story end up on a personal level, really didn't do it for me. I realized this when thinking back to the Ugly series. It's a series that's been on my mind for the last couple of years, and rightfully so. If you haven't read it, the best way to describe it would be a dystopian series where everyone is born ugly, and at 16, people are given a surgery to become pretty. If you read the books, you'll see that there is an entire system that makes these kids and everyone around them think that without this surgery, everyone is inherently ugly. There's a lot of social commentary in the books, and maybe the commentary isn't perfect, but there's a strong emphasis on figuring out what your opinions are without other people telling you what to think. A large part of the characters developing their own opinions is them appreciating beauty without first thinking about what society has told them beauty is. The significant part in this series is that the main character eventually tries to take down these systems that have poisoned people's brains into making them think that everyone is inherently ugly. When I thought back to this book about beauty and physical appearance, The Substance immediately came back to my mind as well. Both of these stories deal with main female characters who are told that their looks are unappealing, but only one of these stories truly challenges the systems that implemented these beauty standards. We have a million stories about women who fall victim to the pressures of beauty standards, and a million more people in real life who also speak about these pressures. But when you add a sci-fi element to the story, why make the ending boring? Story-wise, the idea of an older woman being told that she's no longer the look that her job is going for, and her dealing with the industry pressures of changing her looks, then eventually coming to terms with who she is, sounds like a solid film. But when you add a substance that turns said woman into a younger woman that snatches up her old job for a week until the older woman comes back and sits in her luxurious apartment all day, neglecting herself until it's time for the switch, but then eventually gets tired of taking the substance how it's supposed to be taken, so she becomes... Yeah, that's a pretty interesting story. But when it comes back to terms with who she is and fades away into a memory, it's a bit of a undramatic ending to a dramatic story, and not in a satisfying way. If you wanted to have a story where an older woman comes to terms with her appearance in the end of a movie in an undramatic way, then don't do all of that in the film. Make a coming to terms movie. A movie that's a coming of age film, but with an older woman rediscovering herself and finally coming to terms with her image. In this movie, Elizabeth Sparkle could be her same superstar self, or just a regular degular woman in her 60s. And if you do want to include sci-fi elements into the film, the ending has to change, and it has to be strong. We have to see a push for society to change. If we have the same ending as this film, but change it into a more indie, down-to-earth movie, then the ending would just be her coming to terms with who she is and maybe impacting the people around her. But that's not the film that we're making here. Since this movie is inherently dramatic, we need to see things change a little bit, and I would start with the plot. Since Elizabeth Sparkle's job was literally on TV, do you know how cool it would have been to see her try to dismantle these standards on television? We could have gotten a movie where the sci-fi plotline was the fact that her boss wanted to see her take the substance in order to stay at her job. And throughout the movie, we see Elizabeth struggle with this decision. Initially, she doesn't want to take it, but eventually gives in to continue funding her lavish lifestyle. As the story continues, we slowly see that this choice doesn't give her any sort of personal satisfaction. And eventually, we see her devise a plan to air out the process of taking the substance on national television. Since there are so many stories of older women coming to terms with being okay with how they look and appreciating their wrinkles and exercising and just doing things that are healthy for them and realizing that as long as they are fulfilled internally, what society pushes on them doesn't matter. I think that in our media, we're ready to see changes that push beyond internal satisfaction for older women. I think we're ready to see these standards be challenged. We're ready to see systems change.